Yo guys, Jonathan here, and yesterday Tim Apple dropped 3 brand new iPhones. My initial video was really more focused on the iPhone 11 Pro, so if you missed that, I'll drop a link down below. Today though, I want to talk about the iPhone 11, the differences versus the 11 Pro, why I still feel the iPhone 11 is the best iPhone for most people, and finally, go a little deeper into some of the things Apple didn't talk about on stage. Long live Windows 95. So the iPhone 11 is the follow-up to the iPhone XR, the iPhone 11 Pro is the follow-up to the iPhone XS, and finally, the iPhone 11 Pro Max supersedes the iPhone XS Max. And while I don't think that's the best name in the world, the overall naming scheme and branding this year is much better. 1, the Roman numerals are gone, so we're not gonna have people asking for the iPhone XI, thank goodness. And 2, I really think it was a smart move with Apple not naming the iPhone 11 the iPhone 11R, because whoever picks one up isn't gonna feel like they're getting the budget or watered down version, and rightfully so, because the 11 shares more features with the Pro than you might think. Price-wise, that is the most attractive thing about the iPhone 11. It's essentially a better XR for $50 cheaper. Tim Cook came in clutch, dropped this thing down to $699, and that's gonna save you $300 versus the 11 Pro, or $400 stacked against the 11 Pro Max. First and foremost, you get the same exact A13 Bionic processor, so no sacrifice in performance. It is worth noting, Apple did not talk about it on stage, but I would more than likely bet, just like last year, the iPhone 11 Pro is gonna have more RAM than the 11, but again, it is the same exact chip. While the iPhone 11 Pro does have that fancy pants triple lens system, the front-facing camera on the 11 Pro is exactly the same as the 11. There's a brand new 12 megapixel sensor in there, and to clarify, by default, it's gonna be cropped in. So those are gonna be 7 megapixel photos. But when you open up to the wide angle mode, that's gonna utilize all the megapixels and take full advantage of that sensor. Now, the way Apple demoed this on stage was cool. Don't get me wrong, you just flip your phone into landscape mode, it automatically just adjusts into wide angle mode. But what they didn't talk about is this will also work in portrait mode by simply zooming out. So you're not just limited to landscape, which is awesome. That same front-facing camera will now record 4K video up to 60 frames per second, or 4K video up to 30 frames per second with extended dynamic range, which is huge. Also new with the front-facing camera is slow motion video, 120 frames per second at 1080p, and please, nobody type slow fees in the comments below. With that same identical front-facing camera also comes the same true depth sensor. So all the Face ID improvements on the 11 Pro come to the iPhone 11. It's faster, you have more range. Apparently you can now use Face ID when your phone's lying flat on a table. And while that's not gonna be really that useful, I think that will apply more to maybe something like Apple Pay. So you're at the store, you're not having to bring your phone up to your face. You can kind of just casually look at it, glance at it, pay, get out, and you're good to go. Video capabilities are also the exact same. So on both the iPhone 11 and the 11 Pro, you can now shoot 4K video, not only up to 60 frames per second, but 4K 60 with extended dynamic range, which was previously capped at 30 frames per second. For reference, here is what 4K 60 looks like on the iPhone XR. There is no extended dynamic range. Take a look at the sky, the highlights, and then we hop over to 4K 30 with extended dynamic range. You can see there is a huge difference. Also, again, the exact same on both phones is night mode, which, yes, I know Pixel Lover 5476, you've had it. Apple is late to the game, but it's exciting that it's here on the iPhone. Apple kind of showcased that it will work automatically, so when it knows there's not enough light, it just turns on. But what they didn't talk about is when the iPhone knows it's steady or still, whether it's a tripod or honestly just a salt shaker, it's gonna go into extended shutter mode, which is crazy cool. From there, jumping over to the differences. With the iPhone 11 Pro, even with that ridiculous name aside,
the Super Retina XDR display.
For me, the display is an even bigger difference than the triple camera system. With the iPhone 11 versus the Pro, yes, LCD versus OLED, but with the 11 Pro, you now have a 2,000,000:1 contrast ratio, a peak brightness of 1200 nits, a sustained brightness of 800 nits, and all that fancy tech talk that probably makes no sense. What that translates to is true HDR support on the 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max. Now at this point, if you're confused and you thought the iPhone XS and XS Max supported HDR, it did. It played back HDR video, but it wasn't up to the HDR10 or Dolby Vision spec, and now it is. So with that, you kind of got to weigh your options. Like, are you going to be watching HDR, Dolby Vision content on your phone, or would you prefer to watch that on a TV? If you are, cool, it's there. But if not, the iPhone 11 looks really good. Now, while you do lose HDR10 and Dolby Vision on the iPhone 11, you do get Dolby Atmos and spatial audio, same as on the iPhone 11 Pro. Apple kind of showcased that on stage where it creates this virtual surround stage around you. Kind of curious to see how that actually works in person. But either way, while you do sacrifice some of the video, it's nice that you get the same audio. Now, as far as charging goes, both the iPhone 11 and the 11 Pro support fast charging, but in the box, you're only getting that 18-watt fast USB-C charger with the Pro and the Pro Max. With the iPhone 11, you are stuck with that tears.png 5-watt charger. But again, you got to factor in the price difference. For $699, you can probably scoop up something for $30 and you're still going to save a ton compared to the 11 Pro. From there, let's talk about that triple lens camera system. And coming from someone who uses on their regular the iPhone XR, I'm not the biggest telephoto fan. Now, with the iPhone 11 Pro, we're seeing the aperture drop from f2.4 to 2.0, so there will be better low light performance, and with that, I'm gonna kind of wait and see before I write that off. But again, if you're not really into the display, I wouldn't say the telephoto lens is a huge reason to jump from the 11 to the Pro. One thing I also wanted to clarify is battery life. And don't get me wrong, 4 hours more on the iPhone 11 Pro, 5 hours more on the Pro Max is super impressive, but when compared to the iPhone 11, it might have been a little confusing or even deceptive. You gotta remember, the iPhone XR was the battery life king. Like, it smashed the iPhone XS and XS Max. And yes, while the balance of the force might have been restored this year, and on paper, the 11 Pro and the 11 Pro Max are going to be better than the 11, the gap between the three isn't as big as you might think. Now, if you watched the keynote, or you didn't, Apple for like 2 seconds dropped a slide of every other feature that both the iPhone 11 and Pro had, and one that really stood out to me that they didn't really talk about was the Apple U1 chip. So what that's for is for ultra wideband spatial awareness, and fancy tech talk condensed into normal human speak is your phone's gonna be aware of where it is relative to other phones around it. So immediately, right out the bat, that's gonna be useful in something like AirDrop, where if you're next to someone, it's going to prioritize them instead of someone 15 feet away. That is shared across both the iPhone 11 and the 11 Pro. Same with gigabit class LTE, Wi-Fi 6, which kind of just hammers the point home that you're not sacrificing really that much with the iPhone 11. And again, I think for most people, you're not gonna need that Pro, and for $699, it's hard to argue with. One more thing to consider is the iPhone 11 stays the exact same weight as the iPhone XR, whereas the iPhone 11 Pro and the 11 Pro Max, those boys got just a little thicker, like one more C. And the iPhone 11 Pro Max, that is a beefy boy, 226 grams. Like, you lift that, you feel that. At the very least, you're gonna make some gains, and I guess that triple camera lens system comes at the expense of some thick. Either way though, hopefully you enjoyed the video, the comparison. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you missed the iPhone 11 Pro and Pro Max hands-on, that is linked here or down below. This is Jonathan, and I'll catch you guys later.